Episode 201, First Principles Continued, Manures. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 3rd of February 2020, John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. This week we're delving into the font of fertility, manures. The lifeblood of organic production, manures keep your fertility ticking along. And remember, fertility determines your production. Choosing which one to use can be fraught with complications. What do the NPK numbers mean? Can I trust the figures provided? How do they relate to the seeds I'm using? How much sleep should I lose worrying about all of this? Most of the manures I use do not come with an NPK rating. NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. I mention them because I've seen a number of, in inverted commas, organic fertilisers with added chemicals available in a well-known hardware supplier. Not only fertilisers, but blood and bone as well. So the science of all this is predicated on the idea of commercial growers. Things like artificial fertiliser, hybrid seeds, pesticides, herbicides and irrigation. Maximum production, no matter what the input costs, from minimal area. This may make sense in some conditions, but does not, to my mind, mimic nature. The key to using good manures is to collect them from your own animals. Now, I understand this isn't always possible, but there are options. There's a place down the road from us where the people keep horses, and they regularly have feed bags full of droppings for sale for $2. You may pay more where you are, but these things are available. A word of caution, though. Unless you can be sure of what's gone in the front end of the horse, you can't be certain about what's coming out the back end. That being said, hot composting the horse poo makes a big difference. I'm not sure about antibiotics or anything else that may or may not have been fed to the horses, and the effects of composting on those, so be careful. In the end, it comes down to two things really with manures. That is, 1, what you have on hand, and 2, what you can afford to purchase. Now, as we've mentioned before, nature has evolved with a tendency towards redundancy in systems. That being said, not knowing the actual chemical composition of the manures you use probably doesn't matter that much. Given that you'll probably be growing with heirloom heritage seeds, as we discussed a couple of episodes back, the bell curve of the genetics of the seeds will be much wider and somewhat shallower than extensively hybridised commercial seeds, which were developed to work best within a set water, fertiliser and daylight parameters. We are growing better food than this, so we can be a little more relaxed when it comes to inputs, as they say in the bean counting world. Now, those of you that are interested in the NPK values, there's a table in the show notes with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium and calcium figures for some common organic manures. These are just guidelines. Don't stake your financial future on them, but use them as a rough rule of thumb. The approach I take and advocate for you is use what you have. If you keep chooks, use poultry manure, especially if it's mixed with bedding. That bedding can be straw, bracken, wood chips, wood shavings, even sawdust or leaves. If you let it rot a little and add it in the spring and autumn/fall, it won't have a detrimental effect. Also, pick the right crop to add it to. Spuds love manures, but not straight chook poo. In fact, nothing much is keen on straight chook poo. So you could toss it into your compost piles or mix it with vegetable waste and run it through your compost worms. By adding mature piles of manure once or twice a year, you get to make strategic decisions as to where and why you're adding manure. Feeding the hungriest of plants is probably the best use. As I said, spuds, but also sweet corn or a maize crop of any sort would be a good start. A word of caution though. Once the wonders of manure become apparent to you, they can become an obsession. Collecting the stuff wherever you can find it. In the past I was known in some circles as the poo king, begging, borrowing and scavenging from anywhere. Not just manures, but any sort of organic matter, leaves, straw, wood chips, and poo, always the poo. And it became an all-consuming passion. I didn't stoop as low as dog or cat droppings. Cats can pass on viruses, apparently, so that's probably best avoided anyway. My preferred use of all these things, wood chips aside, is to feed them to compost worms. Find the worm castings work like rocket fuel, and size is reduced and it's easier to move the stuff about. Otherwise, manures can be used under the cardboard sheets newspapers that are the first step in setting up a no-dig garden as described back in episode 198. Here it is away from the sun and in contact with the soil where the biology has time to get at it. Cow poo works well here too, because normally it's a bit sloppy, but even if you've picked up the dried up pats, the fact that the ground's wet, the cardboard's wet, will re-energise the manure. This is just as good a use for manure even when they're mixed with straw as an animal bedding. And the bedding can be used directly as the organic matter in the beds, as I've discussed elsewhere with goat bedding. It is worth noting that E. coli can be found in this material and the straight manures too. So be careful, wash your hands after handling and wash produce before eating. Of course, fully heat composted material doesn't have this issue. I can't say I've ever had any problems with it, but it is something to be aware of. So basically, find your poo source, handle it carefully, and grow great food. It's not that hard, really. Now, if you've made it this far into the episode, I'm assuming you have an interest in what I've been talking about, both today and for the last few episodes of this first principal run of shows. So if you're ready to put these things into practice, pop over to worldorganicnews.com, all one word of course. Drop your email and first name into the form on the front page to get hold of my no-dig gardening book for Nicks. The techniques and examples there will help you to feed yourself and your loved ones, and also it will help you to decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week.